Well, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Um, Whatever time it is where you're watching, I am Shannon Burton, your host of Freedom from Grief. What happens after we die? Navigating loss through spirituality. And today I am super duper happy to
Mhm.
welcome Miss Julie Clough. She's a powerful podcaster, a mom, a grief counselor, and everything in between. And I'm just really thrilled to have you on, Julie. So I'm going to turn it over to you and just ask you to tell us who you are and what do you do other than the things I just mentioned.
I'm Julie Clough, and I've had multiple grief experiences in my life, and I turned that into a grief coaching program to help people understand their grief so that because grief is painful already, and when we don't understand it, we create more pain around it. So I created a grief coaching program. I now teach other coaches that grief program so that they can help their clients. And I have been teaching angels about angels and how we can use angels to help us in our process of not only grief, but just anyone can use their angels to help them as they navigate life. And their angels want to help. So that makes it extra
Oh,
fun.
we're going to dive all into that. So you founded Build a Life After Loss. Um, can you give us a little bit of history about what caused you to found that organization? Just the backstory, and then how that led you to grief healing. So,
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
precipitated Build a Life After Loss?
What precipitated it was that, like I mentioned before, I've gone through a lot of loss experiences. The first that was super impactful to me was when my brother died by suicide, and that was devastating and shocking. And not long after that, I went through a divorce from my first husband of 9 years
Mm,
with three small children. And
that's
I,
a lot.
managed through all of that, muddled through. But then in 2007, I had since remarried, had three more children. And in 2007, I was in a rollover car accident with my three youngest children. And sadly, my two youngest, Carrie, who was 10, David, who was 8, passed away in that accident. They died that
Mhm.
day. And that sent me into a whole new level of grief that was incomprehensible and overwhelming, and yet I had in the back of my mind those earlier grief experiences actually informed my grief with my when my children died. And even though it was mm, just sent me into a downward spiral, there was
Yeah.
always a piece inside me that was like, okay, I made it through these other experiences, maybe I can make it through this. and
Mm,
um And remarkably, I did. And my belief is that we, anyone experiencing grief, can learn to separate love and grief, can learn to separate the experience from the pain and be able to let go of the pain and keep the love that they had for the person. Or
mm.
and depending on the circumstances, sometimes our grief is precipitated by people who are not so kind and abuse us and things like that. So there's a whole nother separation that we need to make between the pain that was caused to us and the need to hold on to the grief. And so as we work through
Mm.
that, we can let go of the pain. And now today I live, I'm just every day I wake up in so much gratitude for the life that I live, for my children who lived only 8 and 10 years. And I always say that I feel like before I came here, I had a choice. They could be my children for 8 and 10 years, or they could go to someone else that would be willing to let them go at 8 and 10 years. And so that's the way I look at it today.
I love that because what I'm hearing is something that I actually do believe is that we choose a lot of our experiences, if not all, before we come here. Um, and you willingly took that on, the choice to love them And in that also the choice to let them go, albeit to some it might not seem understandable because it's like, why would anybody choose that? But it does that did that understanding help you move forward? I would think that it did. At least it has helped me in things I've gone through.
Absolutely, but it's not something that we can, like you said, it's not something we can wrap our head around in
Right.
early grief. In early grief, we just have to be there in the moment, in the pain, in the experience. And over time with growth and with time, which most people say, and the grace of God and just our willingness to put forth the effort to come to terms with what's happened, to come to a place of acceptance. It's a lot of work to come to a place of acceptance, but it is part of the work of grief.
It is. It totally is. So you've worked with so many people, I'm sure, just since you started this organization and then just your coaching, I guess, division or of your organization. So what do you tell your clients is like, and then for people who are listening, the number one thing they can do just to kind of get through that first hump of, you know what, I'm just in shock and in pain. I want to feel better. I don't want to end it all. I just want to kind of move through. What would be the first thing that you would tell somebody?
The first thing is to learn self-compassion and to
Mm.
give ourselves grace. And in the beginning of my own experience, because of my previous grief experiences, I was all in on the grief. And what I mean by that is I knew that that was to be my experience in that moment. Like that was where I was at, and I didn't rush it. I didn't try to just get over it. Like so many people will think they just have to get over it, or people will tell them it's time. I am astonished, absolutely astonished by the things that are told people. And I've had clients say, I just had somebody tell me, it'd been 3 months since their husband had died, or it'd been 3 months since their divorce, or 3 months since another event. And someone will say, you're not over that yet? And
Ooh.
I'm shocked by it. So if you're here listening to this and someone has said something to you that it feels off, it feels painful, know, like you were talking about being misunderstood, know that that person hasn't had a grief experience that they can relate enough to what you're going through. And most people mean well. They truly mean well. I've found there's been occasions when I've worked with a client where they've had someone that just was mean and didn't really mean well, but most people mean well and they say things and they don't recognize what they're saying or what they're implying. And so, in giving ourselves grace and recognizing it's okay to grieve, that we have permission to grieve, that we have permission to have our own experience, the other person that's saying these things doesn't get it, and that's okay.
Well, since they don't get it, um, I personally have experienced this, and you feel like you're in the middle. Should I isolate myself because I can't deal with the comments? I can't deal with the feeling misunderstood. So I want to isolate myself, just hide under the covers. Or should I continue to engage with those who just don't understand me? Like, how do people toggle between that?
I think it depends on where you're at, and you and every person is going to move through this differently. And to give
Mhm.
yourself, again, give yourself compassion. Think about telling your story, what you're going through right now, to your closest friend, your friend that understands everything and is compassionate and loves you and is willing to allow you whatever you're feeling. And then think about
Mhm.
if a friend of yours was telling you your story, what would you say to them?
Yeah. I mean that could be really, really helpful. At least it would have been for me. That's great
Yeah.
advice, and I guess that's why I think that what you do is so useful because a lot of people, including myself, which is one of the reasons I began this podcast, is I didn't know that grief is its own category of healing and therapy. Like there are a lot of grief specific things that you can do to try to move through that. So I think that that's actually really helpful. Now, when you mentioned self-compassion, if somebody feels terrible because they've lost someone, and you wanna take your time, you wanna be easy with yourself, but you also don't wanna feel bad anymore. How can somebody, I guess, do both? Like, I don't wanna be sad, but I wanna give myself time to be sad. So it's kinda tough when you're in that space. Grief is really complicated, so I would just love to hear your answer to that.
It is really complex. It really is. And just going back to what you said a moment ago about, people saying hurtful things and you want to isolate, but you also, I think we have a need for other people. So we start to learn who it's safe to share things with. So we
Mm.
just become in this space of this person is safe to share things with and this person isn't. And it's okay to make those decisions. And it's okay to do some spending time alone. Just make sure that you're not spending all your time alone, that you are creating safe spaces with at least one or two people. You don't need 50 people. In this
Oh.
world of social media, sometimes we think we need 1,000 people to understand what's going on with us. We really only need one or two people that can be there for us. But speaking to this idea of being in this space of not wanting to be sad anymore and wanting to do better, this is the middle ground. That
Mm.
early grief, all we can do is think about our grief, and all we can do is sit in the pain. That is just the experience. But as time goes on, and that overwhelming grief, I see grief in different levels. Once that really overwhelming grief starts to move through us, and we go into what I call functional grief, then that middle piece where we're functioning okay, we're kind of showing up in our life, but we're still just overwhelmingly sad, and we're still feeling that deep pain. In that middle ground, that is the most dangerous spot
Mm.
in my viewpoint, because then
Mm.
when we start thinking, I should be doing better than I am, that
Mhm.
is a shame thought.
Ooh.
Now we're looking at ourselves as if we're bad instead of the experience is hard.
Mm.
So
That's gotta
start.
take a breath on that.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
It really is
Um,
taking a step back and recognizing that the grief is not our identity, that we're still
mhm,
going through grief, and it's okay to still be experiencing the pain. And it's a tricky place because we're trying to hold on to two pieces. We're still experiencing the grief, and we need to allow that,
mhm.
but also allow ourselves to have hope that things can continue to get better.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
And I compare grief and
Mhm.
painful emotional experiences a lot of times to our physical experiences. So
What
if
do
you
you
think,
mean?
well, if you think about, yeah, if someone's ever been in a really really horrific car accident and they have a lot of injuries that they're trying to heal, physical injuries that they're trying to heal, it can take weeks and months, and physical healing a lot of times takes way longer than we want it to.
Mhm.
We break our ankle and we want to be better tomorrow, but we also have this understanding that we're not going to run a marathon the next day. And
Right.
and so if we think about our emotional pain the same way that we think about our physical
Oh
injury.
my God. That is so I love it. I love that analogy. I get that. I get that. Thank you. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, I
That just
remember
hit
when
me. I get that.
I remember when I got sick a couple years ago, and the first couple of days I was really sick, and all I wanted to do is lay around. And then I started to feel better after a couple of days. I was feeling fine, but I wasn't fully myself. And I remember sitting on the couch and having this thought, I am never going to be better. I can't even picture myself wanting to go back to work right now. And I thought, is it ever going to come back? Well, that illness only lasted 5 days. And then it was like, oh, then I was fine. But I remember sitting on the couch and I remember thinking that I was like, oh my gosh, look at how quickly we fall into this. Oh, it's never going to get better.
That is so true. And Julie, I mean, just talking to you and having lived through a lot of loss myself and knowing people, if you look back on that time, you were like, I thought that was it. I know you can't even believe, like, here, you look great, like you're thriving. Like, as an example, I just think it's just a beautiful example to be out here showing people, like, you know what? Yes, me too. I was in that front row. It happens to all of us at some point in time. If you love, you have people, and yes, it doesn't seem like it's going to end, but proof
Mhm.
positive, it actually does. As
Yeah.
devastating as it seems in the moment. And so, um, you now have angels, and I love, love, love how you speak about this and the new angelic connection, the power that that brings to your life while you're still here in physical form. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that just brought you so much more light and how that helped you heal?
I believe that when we go through challenging things, especially when we watch or we experience someone's death, it it connects us to the other side even more powerfully. We are always, from
Mm,
the time we are born, we're connected to the other side, but we're not always aware.
yeah.
And when we have these experiences, as painful as they are, it's like it connects us. When my brother died, when my kids died, I I suddenly had these people that were really, really close to me on the
Mhm.
other side. The other side became that much more real. It's always been a part of my belief system, but it was just that much more real. And as I've
Mhm.
explored that, I have discovered that many of the things that I experienced, I wrote a book called Miracles in the Darkness. And if I wrote that book today, I think I would explain it a little differently in some of the experiences. And I'm actually in the middle of writing a book about our angels, and I see some of those experiences. For example, we were in a rollover accident. That's when my children died, and
Right.
in the middle of that accident, I heard a voice tell me to bring my arm in.
You really did.
I really did. And I don't know how, but somehow I I was able to actually do it. Somehow I had the presence of mind to follow the direction to bring my arm in. Less than 3 months later, my uncle called me and said, I just saw a woman on TV. She's a dancer. She lost an arm in a rollover accident that was similar to the accident you were in. A couple of years later, I met another woman who had lost her arm in a rollover accident. Now, I knew that was spirit speaking to me, but I have a better understanding that spirit works through our angels. We all have angels. We are never ever alone. And even in grief, when we can't feel that presence, we are not alone. God sends
Mm,
messengers that are with us all the time, and they intervene in life or death situations, but they also
yes.
can act in our behalf when we ask. When we ask for the simple things.
Do tell. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it
I
was
mean, a lot of people don't realize that. Some people do follow a particular religion closely. Some people might be atheist, agnostic, the gamut. they don't know that we have access to this powerful, helping, healing light. We have access to it, and we do ourselves a disservice by not doing it. But if we don't know, how can we? So please teach a little bit.
Well, I heard it described one time as, and I don't know if I want to use this example, but I'm gonna use it anyway. But I heard it
Okay.
described sometime as if we have this really friendly, eager butler that follows us around all the time. I don't know
The
if I
butler.
love I don't know if I love that example, but our angels love us and they don't judge us. I think that was the biggest thing for me, was to recognize that they don't judge us, that they know how hard what we're going through is, that they know us better than we know ourselves. They know our past, present, and future better than we know ourselves. They understand the struggles we have in this realm, and so they're not judging us, they want to help. And in life or death situations, they intervene. But in everyday experiences, they honor our power of choice. And so if we
Mm.
ask for help, and it could be as simple as, I don't know what to fix for dinner, please help me see what's in my refrigerator that I can fix for dinner. It can be that simple, because
That
they're
is so
there to help us. They're
that is
there
so cool.
to make our life smoother, to
So
and
is that how we connect? Just ask the simple question?
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're not going to
Wow.
tap us on our shoulder and say, "Hey, look, there's this and this." Now, I think this is where, if you're a praying person and you say your prayers and you're asking for help on a regular basis, then we may feel that tap on the shoulder and say, "Hey, here's this thing." But also to be very specific, this is what I need help with. I ask my
Mm.
angels for help when writing emails, in creating programs, in my relationship with my family, in my day-to-day driving. I live in Tennessee, and sometimes late at night I'm driving and we see deer all the time. And I'll just, before I get on the road, I'll say to my angels, please help the deer to stay safe off the road, and please help me to
Mm.
travel safely. And it's remarkable what
Oh, that's so
happens.
beautiful. Yeah. Oh gosh. And that just shows concern for all involved. And one thing I love about God, or the God of anyone who's watching, the God of your understanding, is that one thing I've learned over the last few years, just in the energy work that I do, is that they are so aware of us. God is so aware of
Absolutely.
us. Our angels are so aware of us in a way that you really can't imagine. Just like you said, with looking in the refrigerator, or even the deer crossing the road, the awareness is beyond really anything that we can imagine. So I think that's something I would love for people to. What is the name of your new book? It's about the angels. Can you say the title of it, or are you? Is the title here
It's
yet?
it's in process. The
Okay,
working title
okay.
right now is Your Angels Love You.
Oh, okay. Well, good. We'll go with that for now. But yeah, well, check out
Because
everything she has on her podcast. It's also helpful. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's gonna be cool. But
yeah.
one thing I do want to ask you about, before you tell us about the gift that you're offering the audience, is yes, our angels are protecting us. They love us. God loves us. There's so much love and support for us here as we live out this human experience. But when things don't go our way, we know that, well, we might not know. Some may believe that we choose our path before we get here. I happen to be one of those people.
And I
But
believe
when
that too.
things don't go our way, it can happen suddenly. It can happen before the gavel drops. It's like anticipatory grief. And you're in that stage where you're like, please, no, no, I don't want this to happen. How do you counsel people who are angry with God? Because it's like the understanding is here and they're all the way over here. Like this cannot be. I would have never chosen this. And you didn't do like I asked. I've done everything right. Now what happened? God, you got some explaining to do. And these angels, where were you when I asked?
Yeah, absolutely. Every time we'd go on a trip, we would pray for safety. And of course, that day, safety didn't come. And yet there were miracles right in the middle
Mm,
of my children dying. And as I could, so there's no easy answer to what you're
yeah.
saying, but just recognizing that God understands our anger, and he's patient with us, and he's loving with us, and he will allow
Mhm.
us that time, especially when we're
Mm,
putting forth the effort. He will allow us that time to work through our experience. My kids,
yeah.
I remember walking into a store after my kids had died, and it was, they died on Mother's Day. And
Mm,
in September, the Halloween costumes came out in the local store, and I walked in and I saw the costumes hanging there, and I saw this flowy witch costume, and I thought of my daughter Carrie, and I thought, oh, Carrie would love this. My first reaction was, Carrie would love this. I want to get this for her. And then the thought immediately after was, she's not here.
mhm.
And the devastation that I would not be buying a Halloween costume for her that year. And I remember in my mind saying, why did this happen? Why did this happen? And I heard a voice. This is one of the way my angels speak to me. We all have different spiritual gifts, and we all have different ways that we connect, but they speak to me.
Okay.
I hear, and it's not like, it feels like it's in my ear, but it's in my head. But I heard, they're right where they're supposed to be. And
The
then I
answers are there.
And then I thought, but why did it have to happen this way? I was driving the car. I heaped so much shame and guilt on myself. And it was so painful. And then I heard the voice say to me, how would you have liked it to happen? And it was in that question was
Mm,
the understanding that it was going to happen, that they weren't meant to
mm,
be here longer than 8 and 10 years. I truly believe that when people pass, it's their time, that there's no mistakes in when people
yes.
pass, no matter what the circumstances of their passing, that our angels, God, the universe, however you look at that, there's a planned time. And
Yeah,
and
and that a lot of religions subscribe to that. In Islam, they say the pen has been lifted and the ink has dried. And in
mm,
Christianity, it says, so teach us to number our days that we might apply our hearts unto wisdom. Because, I mean, it's not just a non-religious concept. It's not just spiritual. I know we always go back and forth between the two,
yeah,
but wow. I love that you told that story because there is
ab-
understanding out there for us. And
absolutely.
God, the source, divine love, they want to give you the answers. If you can get to the point where you can quiet yourself to maybe hear that voice, there is understanding that's waiting for you. There's clarity. There's peace. Once you can get to the point through the wrenching pain of the grief, there are answers for you, which will help it all make sense. So thank you
Well,
for
and the
sharing that.
pain really becomes a almost a wall between,
Mm,
because the pain is so great that we kind of shut down our receivers, if you will. Whatever way, whatever your spiritual gifts are, whatever, and everybody has them. And if you might be thinking right now, I don't have any spiritual gifts. You do. You do. It's just understanding what they are. There's different ways that our angel guides, I'm going to say, speak to us or communicate with us. And in that moment when I heard that question, how would you have liked it to happen? My brain went searching. I went searching for other ways that it could have happened, and there was no good answer. Any way that they passed was going to be painful,
Yeah. But
and there
how
was
did it
going to be
propel you?
questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to be able to say in that moment, all understanding came to me and I figured it all out. No, no. I went through another 2.5 years of living hell. And in fact, in the middle, when I started with the first year and a half, I was so patient with myself, and I'm like, this is what it is. And I just have to, I was patient, but it was in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
pain, trying to figure out how do I escape this pain. And there's no escape. We just have to move through, which I hate that answer. And I know everybody hates that answer. But when I started to say I should be doing better than I am, and I started to think that over and over, and why can't I figure out how to be happy? And people say you can choose to be happy. And I started beating myself up and I spiraled down and crashed. And it was horrendous. And by the grace of God, I eventually he got a message through to me, and
Mm.
I started to recover and heal. And I believe that whatever your grief healing journey looks like, the miracle of healing is available to anyone, just like the miracle of our physical healing.
Yeah. And
It's in our
I just,
blueprint.
it's in our blueprint because we all, well, if we, like I said, if we've loved, then we will lose. I mean, everything is transitory in our lifetimes. Um, Grief can be a really powerful tool. It might not feel like a tool when you're going through the hardest parts of it, but even you have been able to use it to branch out and expand yourself and evolve. And in that helps so many more people who will also go through it. Whereas there was might have been a void if your voice wasn't there. So
Yeah.
can you give us your website and then tell us a little bit about your free gift? I just want people to know how they can access Build a Life After Loss, or you in particular, and all the things that you have to offer.
Yes, so the website is buildalifeafterloss.com. So it's all one word, buildalifeafterloss.com. And on that page, now I could give you the direct link, but it's kind of long. So I'm just going to say, go to that page and go to Angels in the drop down menu. And on that page, you can download a free ebook. It's just it's a short, easily consumable uh, document that will give you some principles of connecting with your angels. It's called Connecting with Your Angels, in fact. And you can
Okay.
download that book, and then um, if you choose to stay on the mailing list, you'll hear about I do free webinars once a month on angels, and so you'll get notifications when I do classes and so forth.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming on, for sharing all the wisdom. Everybody, this woman knows her stuff. She can help you. Her resources are just really, really phenomenal. So thank you again, Julie, for coming on today and just giving us your perspective on spirituality, on loss, and on grief. It has been really valuable. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been a delight.
Mhm. Julie Clough, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.